Now on Friday, I know what Wei was about to do all weekend. He was about to sit back and read his latest book. But then the WWE made a 550-page SEC filing, and Wei was like, boom, let's get this on my Kindle immediately. And Wei, you devoured this thing.
Oh, I put it up. I got ChatGPT to read it up for me, put it out on the big screen. Actually, I got ChatGPT to act it out for me using AI models.
Was it done in the voice of Vince McMahon? Because he was the one that apparently this guy was the straw stirring the drink of these negotiations. So we're going to read the first 300 pages.
Yeah. All right. Shall I get a coffee? Like, do we have time for it?
Siri, read us the SEC filing from Friday, please. There's actually a lot of interesting information in here. It's notable to me that this is not something. I know some MMA reporters have checked this out, but I haven't seen this really, appearing on a whole lot of MMA sites unless I'm like missing stuff. But there's a ton of financial information here of the breakdown of UFC over the years, what they're projecting with the merger. I've seen this just more
in general. Do you find like in the MMA sort of news space, there's as much sort of reporting on the business side of things?
There's some of it, like John Nash at Bloody Elbow, like he does a really great job. Paul Gift, like it's certainly like I don't even want to necessarily compare it with wrestling. Like it's not as though it's I think that there is more attention just because the biggest company in WWE has been publicly traded for so long that there is sort of that interest in things. And in MMA, there's definitely people that follow it, or the Kung Lee lawsuit, for instance. But when it comes to, Endeavor just recently going public, like I don't sense it's broken down in the same way, save for maybe a couple.
Okay.
But there's quite a lot you can glean from this, including a timeline about the merger process. And without going through all of it here, that they had 60 potential parties reach out to them when the transaction was just beginning. This was between January 17th and April 2nd. And of those 60, they signed confidentiality agreements with 20 of those parties. And then they reached an agreement with Endeavor to start the due diligence process in February. And initially, Endeavor submitted a non-binding indication of an agreement to merge with WWE, and it would be Endeavor holding 57% and WWE 43%. But wait a minute, it turned out to be Endeavor 51 and WWE 49. How did they get to those numbers? Well, it turned out that McMahon and Nick Khan, when they met with Endeavor, they presented a term sheet for a 51-49 split, and Endeavor said, well, the only way we're going to give up those 6 percentage points, Vince, you've got to stay. You can't leave. You can't leave us with this company without your guidance. So Vince McMahon said, all right, we'll take more board seats. We'll take a couple more percentage points and I'll stick around. So it very much sounds as the way Ari Emanuel laid it out in this interview on CNBC, that Vince McMahon was a significant part of this deal, to the point that they were willing to negotiate like points in the company towards WWE. Endeavor still has the majority, but it's more board seats. It's 5 out of the 11 board seats are given to the WWE side. And, WrestleNomics, they talked about this as well. The idea of, would it be difficult to manage this company with Vince McMahon still having, shares in the company, and could be someone that could cause a lot of problems on the outside versus having him in the inside of this company and on board with us.
That is incredibly interesting. Like those sort of like the fact that the fact that Vince being inside is somehow a strategic play to, like the lesser of two evils, essentially, is a very interesting concept. I guess, upon hearing this sort of headline, and this sort of I guess play, your first instinct is this genuine? Is there authentic sentiment for Ari Emanuel to feel like Vince McMahon is an integral part of the business, or is it just to keep him, like, are we just being cynical, sort of like longtime Vince McMahon followers, to think that there's no way this guy could possibly bring any sort of positive there's no real justification for a guy like Ari Emanuel to want Vince McMahon to actually be a part of this company? Are we being too cynical, or what? What do you think?
Is Vince McMahon Jared Mencken, or is he Madsen? Who is Vince McMahon in this whole thing?
I feel like he's a bit of both. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't want to get knee deep into succession comparisons, but could you see Logan, or could you see Madsen wanting to keep Logan Roy on board, rather than having him be outside while still maintaining shares?
It's a good question. I could see that.
Oh yeah, I could see it too. I mean, again, are we being on the pessimistic side when it comes to?
Listen, the fact is, Vince McMahon was not going to be just absolved from this company. I mean, he was still going to have significant shares in this company, and Disney just went through this with one of their shareholders. If you want to look the story up, this activist shareholder by the name of Nelson Peltz, who just made life horrible for Disney shareholders and demanding changes, and he had a major voice in all of this, and it required like Bob Iger eventually going public earlier this year that we're going to slash $5.5 billion in costs, and that shut this guy up essentially. Right. And this is just publicity you don't want. And if you're looking at this and you're kicking the tires on WWE, believe me, Ari Emanuel and all those involved in this deal, they're going through with a fine-tooth comb about Vince's whole navigation back into power. And this is a guy that, like, look how he got his way back. And he was literally told, like, the board believes this is not the right time for you to come back. Oh yeah? Wouldn't it be a shame if these TV deals don't get approved because I hold all the power here? Do we really want this guy to be on the outside and creating havoc for us? And maybe as well, Ari Emanuel as well, he's not meeting Vince McMahon for the first time. This is someone he's had a 20+ year relationship with, going back to when they left USA the first time. He might very well look at the playbook of the UFC and Dana White, and they want to replicate it, and Dana and Vince are equals.
I suppose it's just the fact that, like, all of this is coming out at the same time. The fact that it's a jump from 43% to 49%, plus Vince McMahon being a bargaining chip. Would a 49% increase not have been enough? Or on the other hand, would a Vince McMahon being a part of the deal not be enough for their shares to be kept at 43%? The fact that both of them are in tandem, and in fact, like, Vince coming in it's being portrayed that Vince coming in is a reason for the exchange for a 49% share, is interesting, at least, and definitely makes you think. My other question is, these are SEC filings, so they have to be truthful, right? In the court of law.
I don't think you would be posting fraudulent information to the SEC, because that is inviting a lot more problems.
So again, should we be as skeptical? Or, I mean, obviously you could still game it, but to what extent? And will anything like this be investigated further if there is cause for dispute, or,
I don't think there's a whole lot to dispute here, in the sense that, I mean, the question I would have is that when they were negotiating and Endeavor put in their indication of an agreement for a 57-43 split between February 7th and March 22nd, when the counter was made, were they operating under the assumption that Vince would be walking away? Like, what prompts them to come back with this 51-49 offer? And their rebuttal is, fine, we will meet you, but that means, Vince, you have to stay. Were they under the impression for these 6 weeks that Vince is not coming? Like, why would you be asking Vince to stay if that was already assumed?
I think it's a really interesting question. And I do think we have to put it out there that maybe Ari Emanuel actually wants Vince McMahon.
I think he genuinely wanted Vince McMahon in. I don't think he's playing theater here. I mean, there could be, other strategic reasons for it, but I think somebody that has, he has always publicly praised Vince McMahon, and this goes well before any talks of an alliance. But it's an interesting just kind of thought exercise here of how Vince McMahon navigated through this period up until the sale. But there were others listed here. Essentially, it came down to there was a listing of strategic partner one, which has kind of been deduced as Liberty Media involved here, and then two other bidders who decided that neither wished to be the lead investor in an acquisition. And the final decision was made on April the 1st. WWE saw the Endeavor deal as a fair one, and the deal was finalized the next day, which was the second night of WrestleMania. And that's the day that Alex Sherman reported it. And Monday morning, it is announced as trading begins. Actually, before several hours before trading began on April the 3rd. On top of that, two class action lawsuits one against Vince McMahon, one against McMahon and the company, alleging that McMahon breached fiduciary responsibilities to use his majority voting power to change company bylaws and reinsert himself as executive chairman. They have been settled, and McMahon has agreed to pay the plaintiffs' counsel $1.65 million. And the bylaws have since been repealed because Vince McMahon he's doing fine, regardless of what the bylaws state. So those lawsuits are out. And maybe in his later years, Vince McMahon is realizing that settling is maybe the way to just make things go away. Maybe he's learning how money can work and you can make problems disappear.
I mean, doesn't it just reinforce the reason why he was in all this trouble in the first place? Putting money into something to make it go away? Yeah,
but these were he reported these, so this is not off book expenses. You just gotta report them to the right people. That's the lesson to learn over the past year.
Hey, over at WrestleNomics.com, Brandon has a really good, easily digestible timeline of this entire SEC filing for those of you who don't have the time to sit through the 500, 300 pages. And if you just want a bit more detail, so I highly recommend that, WrestleNomics.com.
On the Post Wrestling Cafe this coming week, we have got Rewind Away with Karen Peterson joining us as we will be reviewing Dream Slam 2, which was headlined by a match that received the Match of the Year award from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We will be going through the majority of that card. Friday night, we have Rewind to SmackDown for Cafe members, and Sunday, Karen Peterson and Bruce Lord will be reviewing New Japan's Resurgence show from Long Beach, California, featuring Will Ospreay against Hiroshi Tanahashi. John Moxley is on the show. Probably a lot of angles to set up Dominion, and probably even some maybe hinting towards Forbidden Door as they start to get closer to that show as well. So all those bonus shows this week, postwrestlingcafe.com, $6 gets you all of our extra bonus shows, all of the archives, and plenty more at the cafe.